All right, so I am Jessica Zavala, and for additional details regarding this webinar as well as our other webinar series, we invite you to visit our website or follow us on Twitter. And now I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Dr. Lynn Abrams. Dr. Abrams has worked with students with learning differences in post-secondary education for 30 years. She has studied the neurodevelopment of students with learning differences in multiple contexts, alternative high schools, correctional setting, and community college. Lynn's interests include how college students with language-based learning differences develop a separate identity in relation to changing family relationships, as well as particular experience of multilingual, multicultural, and international post-secondary students who have learning differences and best practices in students and families transitioning into college environment. Dr. Abrahams is a professor in the Program of Advancement of Learning at Curry College and lives in the Boston area. She has twins and has experience being a college parent with both of them. Vicki Nelson. Vicki has nearly 40 years of experience in higher education as a college administrator. She has weathered the college parenting experience of 3 daughters. Her website, College Central, to help parents navigate the delicate balance of support, guidance, appropriate involvement, and knowing when to get out of the way. Vicki lives in the Boston area and teaches communication at Curry College in Milton, Massachusetts. So without further ado, join me in welcoming Dr. Abrams and Vicki Nelson. Thank you both so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Thank you to everybody for joining us today for what we think is really an untapped resource for many of us, and that is college parents. And thank you, Jessica, for inviting us to come and share some thoughts today. Jessica told you a little bit about us, just to add a little bit more background and to reinforce a couple of things. Lynn and I are both professors. We're on the faculty side. I teach communication and Lynn works with students with learning disabilities. And those are the perspectives that we bring as we look at parents and think about how to talk to parents and work with them. You'll hear those perspectives coming in. But perhaps even more important is what Jessica told you, and that is that we are parents. I have the girls and Lynn has the boys, so we have that covered. And it was when our kids started to go to college that we realized how overwhelmed we were with the process and with being college parents. And we work in higher education. So we began to think, if we were this overwhelmed, what must it be like for parents who don't live in this world of higher ed? And especially as we have increasingly more and more first generation parents who don't have experience with college. And I have to say personally, as my oldest daughter began college, I began to look at my students in a new kind of way. And I began to see them as someone else's child. And that also forced me to think about that relationship between students and their parents and what a difference it can make. We are not experts in student affairs or mental health or counseling. We are not administrators, but we have worked with parents, talked to parents, done some writing for parents. Now we do a podcast for parents. We've done workshops with parents for more than 15 years. So we have gathered a lot of information as we talk and work with parents, and some of that is what we'd like to share with you today. We believe that parents can make a difference in success and retention and all those good things with their students. And so that's our topic for the day.
And I would like to just say hello, and we're thrilled to be here to talk to you all. I am Lynn Abrahams, and as Vicki and Jessica mentioned, not only do I have two sons who have gone through in and out of college, but in my role as a professor working with college students with learning differences, I work a lot with parents, and mostly parents of first-year students who are nervous about sending their kids to college. So our topic today is parental involvement, and one of our points is that we would like to harness all that energy that comes between parents and kids, harness that to support students in their development. And there are three objectives for today, three things we'd like you to take away. First is a better understanding of the theoretical context underlying parent engagement in higher ed. Second is to understand a paradigm shift that we see that impacts how universities and colleges work with parents. And third, to explore touch points for creating a comprehensive family engagement program. We'll share with you what we have been doing over the last 10 years.
So Lynn talked about what we'd like to accomplish, and this is a little bit how we hope to go about that. We'd like to start by looking a little bit at perhaps the more popular perceptions that there are of college parents. I think they will look familiar to you. And then talk about some of the theoretical contexts for building a parent program. Probably nothing new there for you in terms of knowing the information, but framing it perhaps a little differently in terms of college parents and why it helps to share some of that with the parents. And then why think about an actual program for parents and what can that look like, both for parents of first-year students and for the full 4 years that a student is at school, not just focusing on the first year, and then trying to pull it together a little bit at the end for you. We hope that you will take from what we have to say today what you can. Every institution is different. Every set of parents is different. Students are different. The things that work for us may not work for you. We like to work in workshops. We like to be in the room with parents. But some of these ideas may be things that you could put in newsletters or any other format. So pick and choose what works for you. I think the idea of partnering with parents rather than, we'll talk a little more about this later, but rather than dealing with parents and managing parents, maybe a new approach, a new way of looking at how we work with parents. So that's where we're going. We do think if we're all pulling in the same direction, that can make a difference. So hopefully some of this looks familiar to you. This is the more popular perception that there is of college parents and their students. You know, the classic, of course, is the helicopter parent. And then those parents who try to clear everything out of the way for their student, the snowplows, the lawnmowers, the bulldozers, the Black Hawk that swoops in, the Velcro parents, who are the ones who are sticking so closely to everything that their student is doing. And finally, the ones that so many of us who work at higher ed institutions know, and that's the volcano parents. Those are the ones that are so explosive, that go from 0 to 100 in a flash and are calling the college president and the university provost for every little thing. So, you know, some of those labels, unfortunately, as parents, we have earned. And then the students, we sometimes speak of them as the fragile teacups or the snowflakes that melt. Kidults is a term that's sometimes used as students are somewhere between being a kid and being an adult. The trophy kids, the boomerangs. My favorite, I think, is the Crispies. And those are the students who are just completely burned out because they've been so scheduled through all of their lives. The turtles who retreat into their shells and the tightrope generation. So a lot of these labels have been earned and should sound familiar. We'd like to talk about how to perhaps switch that up a little bit.
When we talk about some of the literature, we're very aware that most of you are very familiar with these theorists that we're talking about, but we're hoping we can present this in a little bit of a different way to connect it with working with parents. In some of the older literature, I think of Chickering, the emphasis really was on separation. The assumption was that students could not grow into themselves unless they were split from their family. And that look at parents and students was the background for basically telling parents to just go away. I think when Vicki and I had our kids in college, that was the message we got. Drop them off and you're done. Some of the later theories seem to accept or include the context of family. And those theorists, and those are the folks I'm going to talk about right now, understand that student development is very much rooted in the family and that it's a whole picture. It's not this abrupt separation. One of the first people I just want to mention is Jeffrey Arnett. He's a psychology professor at Clark University, and he has coined the term emerging adulthood as the developmental stage in between adolescence and adulthood. And when Vicki and I talk to families during summer orientation, we talk about Jeffrey Arnett, and we talk about how this developmental stage is 10 years, goes from 18 to 28-ish. And usually there's a gasp in the audience when we say that. First, parents being horrified that it takes this long. But I think there's also some relief that, if their kids are taking some time, that it's okay, that development for this generation takes longer. Jeffrey Arnett talks about 5 characteristics of emerging adults. The first one, identity exploration. That's the main goal of this stage, to figure out who they are. It's a stage of instability. These are students who are constantly making new plans, questioning, reframing, changing a lot. It's the self-focused age, and this is really the one time in our lives that we're allowed to be self-focused, or they are allowed to be self-focused, and because that's what they're supposed to be doing to figure out who they are. It's the age of feeling in between adolescence and adulthood, and the age of possibilities. He found many of the students he interviewed were quite hopeful for the future. We don't know how COVID is going to impact all of this. And it'll be interesting, actually, to see some of the research that's being done right now. Jeffrey Arnett talked about students who are in college and out of college. Marcia Baxter-Magolda talks about college students. And her view of this developmental trajectory involves a shift between students relying on external voices and relying on and trusting their own internal voice. These 3 stages of development, I think, make a lot of sense. Our students who are coming into college are relying on their parents. They're relying on that voice. They're relying on teachers, on peers. Those are the voices that are a part of how they make decisions. Then there's this crossroads, and this is when students come to college and university. It is a shift, and it's a time of questioning, and this all leads to the final stage that she calls self-authorship. And this is when students do have an internal voice. They do have a voice inside that they rely on. She talks about students being the writers of their own lives. And that, that's the goal. One other theorist I want to mention is Jennifer Tanner, and she kind of combines the two, Jeffrey Arnett and Marcia Baxter McGolder. She uses the term recentering, and I really like that term. I think that captures what's happening in this developmental shift. In the first circle, you can see adolescents and parents are within the same family of origin. In the middle, they're starting to split. The emerging adults is creating or trying to create a family system. The parents are still in theirs. And then by the end, the emerging adult has a system, the parents have a system, and they are overlapping. So this is a focus on student development, but it's also important, I think, to look at parent development. Parents are going through shifts of their own. We have a favorite book that we rely on by Marjorie Savage, and the book is called "You're on Your Own, but I'm Here If You Need Me," and it tells the story right in the title. This book was written quite a while ago, and she has a new edition that just came out this year. But she talks about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and she connects it with parents, and she calls it the college parents' pyramid of protection. I sort of see it as a list of worries that parents go through. But the comparison is that, Maslow talks about basic needs, safety needs, social needs, up the ladder to self-fulfillment. She connects that with parents and their fear of letting their kids go. And at the very beginning, they're usually worried about food and shelter. They're making sure, they want to know that their kids they're on their meal plans, and they're living in dorms that are okay. And then after that need is met, they move up to safety needs. And certainly in the days of a pandemic, that's a huge issue. And then when those needs are met, it gets moved up to social. Parents are worried about whether their kids have friends, whether they're loners, whether they're connecting with the right friends. So that's something they're concerned about. And then the next level would be what I think of as the academics. Are my kids going to classes? Are they taking responsibility? And that leads to the thinking of ending college, which is, do my kids are they prepared for a job? Do they know what they're doing after college? So this hierarchy replays itself every time our kids move to a new situation. And Marjorie Savage is helping parents see that. Vicki and I often talk about this during family weekend, to share that we know that parents are going through a lot.
And I think it helps parents to recognize that there is a hierarchy, and that they need to feel comfortable at one stage before they move on to the next. And it helps us in working with parents to recognize that if they're still concerned about some of those lower levels on the pyramid, they're not going to hear some of the messaging that we give them. If we start talking about career and jobs, and they're still worried about, is there chocolate milk in the cafeteria? And which
is a question we've been asked.
Oh yes, that's a real one. But if they're still worried about safety and all, they're not focusing on career yet. So making sure that we really think about how they are developing. So Lynn talked about that paradigm shift that has happened in the theories and in the literature. And that leads us to really a paradigm shift in practice and how we think about and work with parents. And this is that shift from managing parents, dealing with parents, handling parents, all of those words that we often find ourselves using, and telling them to go away, keeping them a little bit at arm's length, to partnering with parents, engaging with them, embracing them, and helping them find ways to be productively involved and to help us pull in the same direction in terms of guiding their students. We have to be ready to partner as well as helping them partner and go from there. So something like a parent program, that we like to think of this as a more comprehensive thing. It's worth thinking about why bother? Why not just let them do their thing and we do our thing and not worrying about coming together and partnering? And really, a program has to begin with educating parents about the shift in their roles, that it will be different, but we are not telling them to go away. We are just helping them redefine their role and their purpose to help them feel engaged, help them feel that they are included and validated and welcomed as part of this partnership. And if we do 1 and 2, I think it leads us to 3 and 4. Doing those first 2 things lays a foundation to build a partnership on. And then we work together to support students as we go through. So we begin by talking to parents about the shift in the role and how it is going to be different. A lot of the workshops that we have conducted, we've titled From Caretaking to Coaching, because we think that's a way to help parents understand how their role may change. We talk about how when their students are home through elementary, middle, high school, that parents really are in the caretaking role. And that can be everything from being the keeper of the family calendar, to making the dentist appointments, to making sure your student is up in the morning to not miss the bus, to monitoring homework. All of those things are part of our caretaking role. But when students go to college, you switch to more of a sideline role. And helping parents understand that sideline doesn't mean that you're out of the picture. So we use an analogy to a good coach who is constantly both encouraging the athlete and sometimes being rather stern with the athlete, is not out on the field playing the game, but is absolutely essential and crucial on the sidelines. So helping parents understand that their role is not going away. They are always going to be parents, but that it is shifting. And that leads to some of those specific conversations around things like FERPA and disabilities.
FERPA is actually an amazingly clear educational opportunity, because it's feels rather dramatic for families to not be in the driver's seat when all the mail from the college and the university goes to the student. When students have to sign a form in order to give parents permission to look at the financial information or grades, that can often feel like a kick in the ribs to parents. But this is a pretty clear indication of this shift that's happening. And especially in the time of COVID too, questions about FERPA are, it's an amazing educational opportunity. The image that I use when I think of parenting college students is a little bit different than the coach image, and that is teaching my son how to drive. And when I got to this big parking lot and he got out of the car and went into the driver's seat and I got in the passenger seat, And he started to drive, and I was terrified because he was absolutely in control. So that's, there's a lot of fear involved in this shift, and it's to me, that's a picture of what it feels like parenting college students.
And when Lynn tells this story, we see a lot of heads nodding, because so many parents have had those same experiences of that white-knuckled drive around the parking lot. So it's something that a lot of parents understand how it feels.
And then when we talk about disability accommodations, this is an area where parents really need to be educated. It's not just an opportunity, it's a necessity at this point. Students need to be educated as well, because the shift between high school and college is quite dramatic. The laws that protect students that have learning disabilities, IDEA, in high school, kindergarten through high school, are very different than the laws that protect students in college, ADA, which is a civil rights law. Very, very different worlds. In college, students cannot bring their IEPs. College professors are not required to make any modifications in curricula. So there are shifts that impact how students get their accommodations. Students need to speak up, and they need to be able to articulate what issues they're having. They need to go to an office for disabilities. They need to have documentation, and they need to, understand how to ask for help. This is not easy, and this shift is, it's crucial that families and students understand it. And so, we find that this is good to bring up with parents as we speak with them. There are many, many questions.
And we have found, and we believe, that by talking about those topics, the shift in role, and addressing some of the issues around FERPA and disability laws early on, it helps parents understand and can prevent some of the misunderstandings and difficulties that happen later when parents are concerned. So educating them early on helps. So in addition to the out of the driver's seat and the coaching analogies, one other metaphor that we like to use is what we call the tripod of college success. And I think this started because I'm married to a photographer, and the tripod is a member of our family. It goes on every vacation with us and everywhere we go. And when you think about a tripod or a three-legged stool, it takes all three legs to make it stand. So if we think of college success as perhaps the camera sitting on top of this tripod, and the three legs are the students, the college, and the parents. And we each have a part to play. We each have something to do, but they're different. And so there are boundaries, and we try to help parents understand we are not suggesting that you go away. You still have an important role. You're going to know your student in ways that we never will. And we also remind them that we will know their student in ways that they never will, because we see some things too. But we all have a role to play, and that's what's going to work. So parents need to encourage students to do what they need to do, not try to do it for them. We need to not try to be the parent, but we do have a role. So if we each do what we need to do, it's going to help students be even more successful. So let's look at what we call a comprehensive program. We've tried to put together something that is a program for all 4 years. There's a lot of focus on certainly parents' involvement in admission. We know that. Noel Levitz did a study that 77% of parents said they're very involved in the admission process. There's a lot of focus on the first year, but we see this as really a 4-year thing that has 7, we call them touch points, 7 moments, 7 phases during which connecting with parents may be helpful. And again, you take from this what you can, depends on what works at your institution. And we like to do workshops if we can, but newsletters or Zoom or webinars or resources that parents can access, whatever seems to work. But thinking about these sort of phases for students. So it begins actually before students even come to college.
At the college we work at, we have high school senior admission days. So parents and students will come. They're visiting a lot of different colleges. We have the opportunity sometimes to speak with them at that point. And this is a time that for many parents, it's their first shift into the role of college parenting. It's their first look at what this is going to be like. We talk to parents about conversations they could have with their kids about why go to college? Are you ready for college? How and where do you want to go to college? We talk a little bit about getting ready for the transition. This is, even though the students are in high school, this is the start of talking with parents. That leads us to touch point 2.
So touch point 2 is one that many institutions have, some kind of accepted or admitted student day, time of great stress for students because they're trying to make a decision, and often very much a sales event for the institution, which makes sense. If we have an opportunity, and we usually do, to have a workshop with parents on that day, we think it can be a really important opportunity to begin to help parents understand the kind of relationship that this institution would like to have with parents, to help them understand that we are not going to shut them out. We will never tell them to go away, but we will try to help them understand how to be appropriately involved as their student is making the decision and going from there. So we talk to them, and we're going fairly quickly through a lot of these bullets. If anyone wants to talk more about any of these later, we're happy to do that. We talk about how stressful the decision-making process is. This is when we introduce that idea of the tripod and what the parent responsibilities might be. We might talk about FERPA a little bit here too. A little preview of the importance of summer orientation and why it's important for students to attend if they can. And some ideas about how to help your student prepare to be a college student and how to prepare yourself for being a college parent. This is a good time to introduce some of the resources that the college has for students, because that's helping parents address that concern of how are you going to take care of my child? Thinking again of some of those early phases of the Maslow pyramid. We have these resources. We're going to support and help your child, and that's helpful. So then we move on to summer orientation, which is something that I think most institutions have some kind of summer orientation for students. Some may or may not have summer orientation for parents. Our college does have a parent orientation that runs parallel to the student orientation. So that's nice. We get to spend some time with parents while the students are doing their thing. And our orientations are very early in the summer. We have them in June. So we have divided up the conversations that we have with parents at summer orientation about what's happening right now as you're at orientation. What can you think about over summer, helping parents understand they still have 2 months left with their student, and then a little preview of coming attractions in terms of what happens in the fall. So talking about right now, what's happening for your student in their orientation while we're here in this room, how to anticipate the change. And here's where we really have some conversations about those images of parents and introduce some of those theories of emerging adult for parents to think about.
We talk about how they could best use the summer to prepare, talking about time management, students getting up themselves in the morning, excuse me. We talk about roommates and how students are afraid of the worst roommate, but they need to prepare to be a good roommate. And parents want to talk about these issues in the summer. We talk about what's coming in the fall. This is when we talk about FERPA. We talk about whether parents should ask their students for their passwords so they can get on their portal. Maybe that's not such a good idea. We talk about some of the differences between high school and college, and what the first 6 weeks of college could bring.
And I think both at orientation and at move-in day, we really try to help parents kind of talk about where you are right now. And parents seem especially grateful to understand that whatever is going on for them is also going on for other parents as well. And that helps, that's a sense of relief, I think, for them. So if we have a chance to touch bases with them on move-in day, it's acknowledging really the awkwardness of the day. And we talk about how we all react to stress differently. And some of us get kind of teary and others of us get snippy. And that if their student is snapping at them, have patience a little bit. That may just be how they're reacting. We see a lot of smiles and parents saying, oh yeah, okay, I understand. Certainly we remind them that when it's time to go, it's time to go, because it's not going to be easier the longer you linger, and that their student has a really important job to do at the end of move-in day, and that's to begin to make this new place their home, to begin to connect with people there, and to begin to settle in, and parents seem to understand that. Like orientation, this is a good time to sort of talk to them about the first 6 weeks. I think those of us who work in higher ed understand how important those 6 weeks are, but parents may not realize how much is going on. What to expect in terms of homesickness, and that it's very normal and that most students do recover, and what resources there are on college campuses, counseling, advisors, people who can help students with that. And then a good reminder that students love care packages, and thinking about, be sure to send plenty of care packages.
Family weekend. We have family weekend at our institution, and in fact, we have it next week, and we're
all
about
virtual,
right? We're about to talk to parents. But this is a really interesting time because now it's a reality. This isn't talking about when your kids go to college. They are in fact there. And even if they are in college in a remote fashion, they are in the college world. This is the time that we do talk a little bit about the Maslow hierarchy. We talk about some of the challenges in the first semester because this is when they're popping up. And parents want to get support from other parents as well. If their kids are struggling academically, if they're having some social issues, we talk to parents a little bit about helping their students ask for help, finding resources, talk to parents about how to model with their students, how to talk to a professor, how to write an email to a professor. So this is the time that the reality has set in, and this is a time that we feel that parents want to connect, they want to talk, and they want to learn how to do this appropriately.
And then comes touch point number 6, which happens more at the beginning of the second semester. And we call this the transition that no one really talks about. I think we often forget that this can be a tough time for many students and their parents. There is often an increased involvement of parents at this point because some students have not had a good first semester. and they may be on probation, they may be on warning, they may have friends that they made in the first semester who are not coming back for the second semester. So I think it's important to acknowledge for parents that this may be a difficult time as they send their student off. Their student has much more of a sense of reality of what college is going to be like. There's less fanfare. And so talking a little bit about the second semester blues for students, it can be a hard time. A lot of students begin to talk about transfer at this point. We encourage parents to encourage their students not to make any big decisions right now, and to let things level off a little bit. Some specific talk about if your student is on warning or probation, had a poor semester, think about setting goals, think about action plans. And it's a good time to reinforce what resources the college has to help support students as they go along. We actually did a podcast episode on the second semester, and it's one of our most popular episodes. So clearly there's a need out there for parents to know what they can do to help. And then finally, touch point 7, which is really multiple touch points because it's the next 3 years. A lot of this was first year, and just remembering and reminding parents that it's a very developmental process for their student. What's going on sophomore year, junior year, senior year, those are very different things. And especially for parents who may not be as familiar with college or who went to college quite a while ago, just thinking about what's going on for their student at each phase. So for sophomore year, at some point, talking about sophomore slump and what that means and how it can happen. This is a time when students need to declare their major or may discover that the major they declared is not what they want, and helping parents not panic when that happens. Some real transfer issues come up at this point. Students settle into the real work because we've all now turned to the new freshman class that is coming in, and the students are more on their own. And then they often start to think about study abroad and study away. So those are things to talk about with parents.
Each year has particular challenges for students. And at each year, students also address the fact that they, whether they want to be there. I mean, many students step out for some time and then step back in. And that can be a really healthy and good thing to do. So junior year, there's a lot of emphasis on career preparation, internships. Junior year can be a time that students, again, are sort of assessing, am I on track to graduate? Have I taken all the courses that I need to take? And then senior year as well. There are particular challenges. We have found that parents are more connected senior year than in sophomore and junior years with their students, because this is another transition. They're beginning to think about leaving college. And so there's more connection there. The emphasis is on, what am I doing after college? Where am I going? We often tell parents not to worry so much because they usually boomerang right back at home. And then they leave again. So, each year has its developmental challenges.
So that's a lot. And again, you take from it what you can, but here are just a couple of things you might think about if any of this sounds as though it might be helpful or useful to you. And it really is looking at what you currently do and why you do it. So thinking a little bit about, does your school have a philosophy about parents? How does your institution look at parents and think about them? And what do you, if anything, do you currently do with or for parents? And would instituting anything help make all of those transitions go more smoothly?
So are you managing them or partnering with them? Are there other touch points during the school year that you think would be helpful to address? Do you have particular groups of parents? international parents or students who are first-gen parents. So, we'd like you to, apply this however it works for you, to see, how it applies to your institution.
So just a couple of summary concluding thoughts. The importance of parent education, that helping them understand what their role is, how it can work, what the expectations are, giving them, in terms of partnership, giving them some jobs to do. We talk a lot about conversations. Have this conversation with your child, have this conversation with your student, talk to your student about this or that, so that we really are connecting and creating a partnership.
And we believe that this does impact retention, that if there is a connection with the family, not just the student, that students will stay in the institution. And the bottom line is, we also believe that we're all working together for the goal of a resilient adult. Parents want that, institutions want that, students want that. And that's where we're all going. We do want to leave you with a few resources that we've used, and leave you also with the image of our resilient adult who has climbed that mountain.
Helping parents see this end result, I think, helps remind them what they really want for their student, and then to say each step along the way, is this really helping toward what I really want for my student? We've included our contact information there. We'd love to hear from anyone if you have questions, if you have suggestions, if you have feedback. And then collegeparentcentral.com is the website. Lots and lots of information and articles there that might be helpful for you to pass along to some of your parents. And also our podcast is the College Parent Central podcast. I think that's what we have.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Abraham and Ms. Nelson, for that presentation. It was very informative. But thank you again for sharing how we can effectively partner with parents, and just so many key takeaways and best practices for universities and parents to really have a successful academic outcome for students. And so I thank you both for your time today, Dr. Abraham and Vicki Nelson, for your time and presentation today. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.